and we'll see what happens. Okay, good morning, Heather. I see that I am finally being recorded. I'm here on Study Hall at the high school. As you can tell, I had to find a few minutes of private time here so that I could do this. I had a couple of things I wanted to share with you. Mr. Robertson and I have been co-teaching these past few weeks. It's been a very enjoyable experience. I wanted to let you know some of the major things that I have learned, especially from him, about understanding student teaching, student learning and development and respect, especially with diversity of students as we teach them. We've definitely worked on ways to become familiar with students' backgrounds and knowledge. I should say my first student teaching period went very well. I was very pleased. Mr. Robinson has taught me a lot, especially with becoming familiar with my students and the staff and the faculty. A couple of major things that we have covered is, pre-testing students to determine achievement levels, conferencing with parents. We've reviewed curriculum folders. We've conducted individual and class discussions. I have also conducted interest inventories, and it's been very successful. However, I do have 4 students in my American history class that are sadly failing the purpose. And I have tried everything that I could think of. Mr. Robinson has tried as well. We've met with the principal and parents, and sadly their previous academic records show that there's just no effort from them. We've utilized the KWL charts, and a couple of the students, we've had them create portfolios in order to show their progress and advancement, and I thought that was really, really exciting, for them as well. We've also went over, clear instructional objectives. The second time, this 8 weeks with the student teaching has really helped me work more on stating my clear instructions and objectives, keeping everything measurable, working on authentic assessment. I've been working much more with my developed daily lesson plans and making sure that they provide a differentiated instruction as approach. I use academic content more considerably as I plug in the standards to my local curriculum with developing my lesson plans. I had an interesting experience with reviewing previous IEP goals with 2 students, and I got to use this last 2 weeks the scoop and sequence for long-term planning, and I found that to be very, very exciting. So I wanted to make 2 separate videos because I wanted to let you know my progress and how well things are going. I've had an excellent experience. Mr. Robinson he's just been phenomenal. Currently the last 2 days, because we have been through our first 9 weeks, we're now in our second 9 weeks, we've been really working towards teaching the kids more ways to improve their content study, making the class more fundamental, more focused. We've encouraged more private study. I brought in some current journals. I had some People magazines. I had some National Geographics, different things, some current events I brought in, which was very helpful. I'm planning on taking an additional course workshop down at WVUP University. I was there 2 weeks ago to kind of help myself with the kids, be more hands-on. GCU has provided a great experience. However, it's a computer screen. There's no personal human contact is maybe what I'm trying to say. I have been networking with other teachers in the area, within Frontier District, within the elementary school, the middle school, and the high school, and I've really learned a lot from them, from what they have taught to what goes to the next step, and what's expected of me as I pass them on to their senior years in school. That's been really kind of an exciting step for me as well. I want to go over with you varied assessments I've seen in my last student teaching, I didn't score very high on one section because of assessments, and I was really weak in that area. And then it's something I've really been working towards improving. I want to make sure I get an A this time. I got a B plus in the student teaching, and I know that I can do better, and I want to show that. As for my assessments, things that I've been working towards is making my learning goals and my instructional procedures clear to students, number one. Beginning of each lesson, I've stated my learning goals and my instructional procedures. I talk with my students about the activities, about what they will be, and what's expected of them. Because my area is very rural, I feel that I have to be very upfront. At the end of my lessons, I review the instructional goals and review what has been accomplished. I think acknowledging accomplishments is a sense of a reward. Even though I'm dealing with 10 through 12, I think that initial recognition is very focused reward. I state my learning goals and my instructive objections in writing. I put them on the whiteboard. And I also do the handouts. I also do verbal reminders. I make sure and clarify everything that is clear. I repeat. I ask questions. I talk intravenously with other students to make sure everybody is clear on instruction. I think that clarity has helped tremendously. I have several students who are very quiet and very shy, or they just don't like to be talked to. They don't like to be called upon. But I've noticed even in that private conversation, it's made a difference. It also helps me to help my students with their learning goals, speaking to them, asking questions, giving them the opportunity to ask me questions. I also have really worked with this assessment, helping students understand short-term and long-term learning goals, especially helping them to make the connection between short-term and long-term and how they will meet and be something that's appropriate that they will use critically for the rest of their lives. It's something that goes across all domains of learning, and it's something that they will always have to be useful. I've also worked on being less nervous in front of this little camera on my laptop too. Along with what I'd said about making connection to other content, I wrote down here in my notes for you, I wanted to go over with you. I want to, make my content more comprehensible to my students. I make content meaningful by relating the lesson to other content. That way I can cross domains, and I can also tap into, their learning outside of school. I can connect real world problems to what they're learning in school. I've also learned to relate my content into especially student interests, as long as, as well as real world situations. I don't have a lot of cultural aspects, as you can tell from here, so that's more something we discuss in books, because as you've seen, it is an all Caucasian school and everyone is primarily Christian. We've recently connected a lot of recent events into, we're currently going over the amendments, the Bill of Rights, and how to amend amendments, really focusing on the Constitution, because a lot of it is OGT material. And a lot of the current events we've discussed, court cases, the election, different things, and how powers of different, elected officials, court cases, the Constitution, how it's interpreted, we plug that in. And that's been a huge, huge difference, and especially in discussion and making valuable information relevant. I know, like when we discussed the election of 1912, a lot of kids found it to be very dry and thought, they didn't care that, that President Theodore Roosevelt, with the election and things. But we took that very dry content and we broke it down and then plugged it into this content now, where President Obama is now going to be dealing with so many new variated Democrats, Republicans, all the new people that's been voted in, and how it's going to make it very controversial the next 2 years, and the value in government and how it's structured. So, just kind of giving you a heads up on that one. Um, let's see, something else. I've got some notes wrote down here I want to go over with you. My main thing I've really changed on is helping students become more engaged in the content through hands-on projects and activities. Like I said, I brought in magazines and things, current events. I've made some like little stations where they can go and either do cooperative projects where they can work together and they can build different projects, or they've got like different little learning stations. I've got pamphlets and things that I've made. I've got some small books. I've got stuff like this. I think you can really see it. I also have PowerPoints built and are available upon checking the memory stick out. I have folders and things that I have kept in a specific section on where the kids can learn about principles and diagrams, hopefully that, yeah, and the Venn diagrams, different things that they can look at. I've had a good success with my PowerPoints that I put on memory sticks. The kids check out, they can take them home. That way, it increases engagement. Kids can take it home, they can share it, they can look at it, they can bring it back. The hands-on projects have been really neat. We've had them, write their own sociological, like social contract, to give them more of an idea of like how and why the Magna Carta was structured and how that eventually led into, the fundamentals of the Bill of Rights and the U.S. Constitution. The social contract, they found that really exciting because that put them in the driver's seat to, build structure, think about structure. Along with that, we've used a lot of comparisons and examples, that have related, like I said, Magna Carta, different things, governmental structures, presidential elections, different things of each president, how they were elected, why they were elected, who served more than 1 or 2 terms, things like that. My major thing I wanted to touch down on that I've encouraged my students to extend their thinking has been a lot of my questions techniques based on Bloom's taxonomy. I really, really enjoy that, how it has broke down into steps and how you can just so critically just jump into it and with your core content, and you can break it up. And I think that's been, my biggest successor for me personally. I like to, still, like I said, I have to help students make connections, to the people around them, events here in the world, and experiences. I ask a lot of open-ended questions, about how they comprehend it, how they think of it. I generally start out with asking lower level questions, especially when it comes to assessment, to see where my baseline starts so that I can be more open-ended. Obviously, politically, we can't get super opinionated, but it's neat to ask the kids, about their political thought, especially with learning, American history and my government are so in tune with each other right now. They're very close to each other. And it's, those open-ended questions help me assess, the wheels that are turning. The cueing, what are they getting out of it? It also gives me an opportunity to do recall, my, chunking, what are they taking from this? Where do I need to work more on? Things like that. My authentic assessment activities, I've done a couple different things. We've done a lot of brief quizzes, critical thinking projects. I know one of the major ones here that I wanted to share with you was, I thought it was kind of cool actually. We've, here, I got ahead of myself. And one of my major, activities here was critical thinking, and it's how do the amendments to the Constitution show the United States government is more democratic today than it was in 1790. We use the cooperative experience for this, for the um, authentic assessments. It we really measured on how the kids discussed and confirmed growth and democracy. Basically what I look for, I got all this written down, so I keep looking down. My amendments, and how they reflect a change in the society or a need for change, and that's where we value a lot of the authentic assessment across the domains. I also look for structure and power of government. I had to write a report that identifies reasons and events that led to the adoption of one of the 27 amendments, and I had to present their findings in class. And it was a good turnout. I was very, very proud of my kids and how they had done. In their cooperative experience, they developed a problem-solving and critical thinking plan. Working with 10th through 12th grade. They integrated their performance skills to their academic content. The students asked one another to provide alternate explanations, especially when I had them, present their findings in the class, and things. And I thought that was very exciting. So I'm going to give you an update on everything. I got everything about done. Having the students make comparison between their findings from the authors, their sources, things like that. It really critiqued their projects, their performance, articles, stories, that they had put together. And, Mr. Robinson showed me one of the main ways to monitor student understanding is, the number one, we provided a time for the guided practice. We put in a time frame. I watched carefully for my nonverbal cues. I watched for anyone struggling with time management. I watched for anyone who needed help organizing themselves or their group. We provided small group instruction. Everything was outlined very clear. And I assessed student progress frequently. And like I said, a lot of different ways. I asked questions. I gave brief quizzes. I checked in to see who's doing what. I done individual discussion. I plugged in feedback tickets, entrance and exit tickets to see, what we were gaining, what we were questioning, what we were strong at, what we were weak at. Circulated a checklist, and that also helped as well. And I made accommodations when needed. I have my IEP students, and some of the students who were struggling, I made up a list of internet sources that was adequate, that the school had approved. That also, kind of helped those that were struggling with motivation. I definitely made sure my instruction time was effective as much as I possibly could. I minimized my non-instructional activities, definitely by having my morning routine set. Overall with my assessment, my projects, my teaching, I have my routine. That has been huge. I followed a lot with GCU, Harry Wong, and setting that routine. So that's really kept my students on target, on task, and keeps my pace very appropriate. I've learned a lot from Mr. Robinson, who has helped me immensely, keep that in mind. Meeting learning goals for my students. Like I said, my evaluation data process has been mostly what I've learned for myself from my lesson plans. I assess myself on effectiveness. I've assessed the students' scores. We just recently done a major assessment on our second unit this past week, and I have to turn that in this week to my instructor. And I was really surprised with the slight improvement, but for the majority, it was the same. I had to improve, but the majority of them all carry passing grades. Like I said, I have 4 in American history that have been straight F's from the beginning. My student feedback, to be absolutely honest with you, my students are very respectful. I have had 3 in my American history classes and 2 in my government class and 5 in my sociology class that, hello, Mrs. Smith, I like you, you're a nice person. For the most part, most of the students tolerate me. They see me as a teacher. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to babysit them. I'm here to educate them, and I have expectations of them. A couple of kids told me that they didn't like me because I use the student bathroom, and it causes conflict because they can't go in there and smoke or sell pills. And I informed them that, 20 years from now, when you're not dying of lung cancer, maybe you might look me up and say thank you. So, they definitely see me as an authority figure, and I think that's respectable and that's okay. In this line of work and profession, we can't be friends. Outside, in sports, outside of school, maybe, anything's possible, but, you have to maintain that authority figure position. My biggest thing I've analyzed, like I said, my aspects of my lessons, I found them to be very effective. My pre and post assessments, I run through the state of Ohio's diagnostics assessments school, and like I said, everything's improving. I have 2 students who majorly improved, but overall, I'm still where I was 8 weeks ago. But they're passing. That's the main objective. I guess I can't expect straight A's across the board from everybody, although I'd like to hope to. Like I said, personally, for delivering my effective instruction and making advances in the next few weeks with my learning is, I'm always learning and making changes to my lectures, discussions, my learning centers, and my learning stations. I always and will continue to use questioning using Bloom's taxonomy. I love my whole group discussion because I can employ so many different aspects in thinking and socializing and communication. I also, still like and still use small group instruction. I haven't had any guest speakers. Mr. Robson's not very big on that, so that's kind of not an option, and I understand that. I respect that. I still work very strongly with cooperative learning and peer teaching. We've been experimenting with this, or co-teaching as he likes to call it, and I have found that to be exceptionally fabulous. He may start the class off and then I pick it up, or I may start it off and he picks it up, or we'll just start together and we discuss the core content. That's for example, in American history, we was discussing, the presidential election of Theodore Roosevelt, and I had made the comment, when he's, going through, what year he was elected, how long his term was, but then I incorporated, personal things, about him. Theodore Roosevelt was a people person, and it was quoted, and I don't believe, I do believe, excuse me, I don't remember who said it, but it was said that Theodore Roosevelt likes to be the corpse at every funeral and the bride at every wedding. And, we really connected that, point into how, his personality was as a president with co-teaching. Like I said, I'm still working on my individual instruction. I try really hard not to ever plan my lesson plans. I try to stay exceptionally flexible. There's no field trips, anything like that at this point. For simulations, I use PowerPoint. I bring in things and I plug into the whiteboard. I had some small video clips and things that I had found on approved web pages and things that I could bring in, which gives the kids really fundamental ideas of the error and the time. They look and they see the things in the background, the furnishings, the environment, the cars. I've brought in and played music of that era, so along with those video clips, which they thought that was really interesting, especially when we were discussing the Industrial Revolution and tenement housings. The kids had never heard ragtime music, and I brought that in and really incorporated that as I showed them, the immigration patterns and pictures and stuff of Ellis Island and things of such sorts. Definitely, I have changed the breaking up of note-taking with comprehension activities. We've been doing like word searches as a comprehension activity. Government and American history is a lot of note-taking, I've noticed. At least that's how Mr. Robinson likes to operate his room. And, I've brought in some different ideas, with worksheet packets, group work, PowerPoint project where the kids can go find, some different things and build small PowerPoints and bring in. We've watched those. I'm really limited in my comprehension activities, but I'm trying to do the best I can. Materials, as you've seen, I have a whiteboard, I got books, we have the internet, we go to the computer lab to research things, we have no librarian, and our library is just plain. One thing I do want to say that I have definitely learned and made sure that I have shared with the kids is learning to use reliable resources in their research, and spoke with them about plagiarism, something that GCU has definitely taught me. I know that's kind of out of the core of government and American history, but they need to know how to make productive information be incorporative, but they also need to know how to make sure it's legitimate information. So I'd kind of throw that in there. Been using a lot of my own teacher-made tests. These tests are not the ones from the book. Mr. Robinson has showed me how to take core questioning. Don't mind them. Like I said, there's no problems here at high school. But anyway, back to my testing. He's allowed me to look over what OGT expectations are for the ODE, High Department of Education. I've been making my own tests instead of using ones from the book. I mean, I've got some ideas from the book, but I try to follow more with ODE's outline, I guess, the word I'm looking for. Like I said, Mr. Robinson always looks things over, make sure everything is, to his satisfactory, as well as what ODE would be expecting of these students at this grade level. I, don't score them by answering. I don't give participation points. I feel that's been kind of an overrated thing. I don't really have a problem kids participating. The main thing I have really enforced, and I do this because Mr. Robinson does it as well, and I've learned this from him, is, like homework, turning homework in. How well did they do on it? How could they improve? Could they have earned a better grade? And, a lot of them, I give them participation points for turning their homework in, instead of maybe speaking in class, because there again, I have those students who either refuse or don't particularly like to be, called on. They'll say pass, but I've made it clear that I will give participation points for at least turning homework in. And I mean, if it's 5 points, it's 5 points. But it's, that's the way I've kind of met in the middle between the two. Rubrics, I'm still using the holistic rubric. I've no complaints, no issues with that. My environment, I'm doing the best I can to promote my high levels of learning, especially achievement for my students. see what else here I wanted to go over with you. Definitely promote fairness. We've had to have a few discussions about bullying and some issues there amongst a couple of students, especially in the hallway. I do lunch duty, I have hallway duty, and I volunteer for bus duty as a way to demonstrate a positive attitude and my own personal behavior towards having zero tolerance. Do the best I can to keep the classroom maintained in an orderly fashion. Like I said, I read the book very well, maintaining routine from the beginning. I meet my students at the door. I walk out with them, wish them, hope tell them they have a good day, and wish them the best, things like that. I always encourage the students in their efforts, I've provided my students the best I can the opportunity for input and output to me. Like I said, that's how I learned, and so many of them don't like me because I'm a teacher. I have definitely done the best I could to show interest in individual talents and my students. I do the best I can to maintain an appropriate sense of humor. I'm not a big TV watcher, so I can't, there you go, see? I don't watch a lot of TV, so it's hard for me to, be able to have a sense of humor about Seinfeld or not The Walking Dead. Like I said, definitely have maintained smiling, eye contact. My concern for the students, I try to be as passionate as I can.
Excuse the interruption. All junior and senior students need to report to the library. Thank you.
Well, that means pretty much this end of this conversation's over because I got kids coming this way. No major behavior issues to report. We are doing well in that. And the rest of the notes, I believe, will wait till later. So, all right. Thank you, Heather, for everything, and I hope you've enjoyed this.